The full story of Jana Duggar's child's Dia asterisk. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. For Duggar family latest news update, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. It had started like any other quiet Arkansas morning. The sun was rising gently over the hills, and the Duggar family homestead was filled with the rustling of sleepy children and the aroma of fresh biscuits in the oven. But that morning would not be ordinary. That morning would mark a turning point, one that would test faith, family, and the strength of love. The joyful anticipation. Jana Duggar, now 35, had long been the quiet rock of the Duggar family. While her younger sisters married young and began their own families, Jana chose to stay close to home, dedicating herself to her siblings, garden, and faith. When she finally announced her courtship with Stephen Wissmann, a soft-spoken and devout man from Nebraska, the Duggar family rejoiced. Their wedding had been simple yet beautiful, an outdoor ceremony surrounded by greenery, hymns sung by loved ones, and prayers whispered into the wind. The couple had decided to wait to announce their pregnancy until the second trimester, wanting to be sure everything was going well. So when Jana finally shared the news in a heartfelt family gathering that she was expecting her first child, tears of joy flowed freely. Michelle hugged her tightly, while Jim Bob looked on with pride and misty eyes. "I always knew you'd be an amazing mother," Jinger whispered as she held her sister's hand. Joy, Jessa, and Jill encircled her with laughter and cheers. Stephen stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her belly, his face a blend of awe and nervousness. "Our miracle," he said softly, an uneasy feeling. As the weeks went by, Jana began preparing the nursery in their modest home on the outskirts of Springdale. She spent hours painting the walls in soft pastel colors and folding tiny onesies with care. Stephen, when not working with his family's construction business, was often by her side, reading scripture and praying for a healthy pregnancy. But somewhere around her 32nd week, Jana began to feel a strange tightness in her abdomen. At first, she dismissed it as Braxton Hicks contractions or fatigue. She didn't want to worry anyone, especially since so many of her sisters had experienced similar symptoms. One Sunday afternoon, while helping Michelle organize photos in the attic, Jana suddenly bent over in pain. Her face went pale, and she clutched her stomach. "Mom, something's wrong," she gasped. Michelle was by her side instantly, helping her down the stairs and into the van. Jim Bob drove them to the hospital, calling Stephen and letting him know they were on their way. At the emergency room, Jana was admitted immediately. Monitors were attached, and nurses moved quickly around her. Stephen arrived breathless, his face lined with concern. "Sir, we're going to need to keep her for observation," one of the doctors said. "There may be signs of fetal distress." A devastating night. The family gathered in the waiting room, anxious and silent. The usually lively Duggar clan was subdued, each sibling and parent deep in prayer. After several hours, a doctor came out. His face was unreadable. "I'm sorry," he began, "but we were unable to detect a heartbeat. Your baby didn't make it." The room fell into stunned silence. Stephen collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands, shaking. Jana, still in the hospital bed, hadn't spoken since the news was broken to her. She stared at the ceiling, her eyes wide and dry. No tears had come yet. Michelle and Jim Bob took turns sitting by her side, but nothing anyone said could penetrate the fog of her grief. When the nurse brought in the tiny baby wrapped in a white blanket, a little girl they'd already named Grace Lydia Wissmann, Jana finally let out a cry that pierced every heart in the room. It was raw, guttural, the sound of a mother losing her child, Stephen's sorrow. Stephen had always been composed, faithful, and grounded. But the death of their daughter shattered something inside him. He sat outside the hospital, head bowed, Bible in hand. He didn't speak much, but his shoulders trembled as he cried silently. The camera crew from a local Christian outlet had heard about the tragedy but were turned away by Josa and Jason, who guarded their sister's privacy fiercely. We're not putting her grief on display, Jason said firmly. Inside, Stephen returned to Jana's room. She looked at him, her eyes dull. She was perfect, she whispered. Her hands so tiny. I held her, Stephen said, his voice cracking. She looked like you. They cried together. For hours, no words. Just shared silence, broken only by sobs and prayers. The funeral. The Duggar family chapel was filled to the brim. Friends, family, and members of the local church community came to honor Grace Lydia Wissmann's short life. Jill, who had experience as a nurse midwife, helped organize the service. Joy sang a hymn through tears. Jessa read a letter Jana had written but couldn't read herself. Dear Grace, it began. You were loved from the moment we knew of you. We dreamed of your laugh, your first steps, your first mama. Even though we never heard your voice, you changed us forever. Jana stood with Stephen, supported by her parents and siblings. When they laid the tiny white casket in the ground, Stephen placed a small carved wooden heart on top. It had Daddy's Girl etched into it. The entire family surrounded the grave and sang It Is Well With My Soul. But for many, it didn't feel well. Not yet, healing slowly. In the weeks after the funeral, Jana remained largely secluded. Her sisters visited often, bringing meals, flowers, and sometimes just sitting with her in silence. Michelle never let a day go by without calling or stopping by. Grief doesn't come with a timetable, Michelle told her. You take all the time you need. Stephen struggled too. He tried to keep busy, pouring himself into work and helping with church events. But sometimes he would disappear for hours, only to be found sitting at the cemetery, reading scriptures aloud to Grace's grave. One day, Jana joined him there. They sat in silence, and then she said, I don't know if I'll ever be okay. Stephen looked at her, eyes red. Me neither. But I want to try. With you? They held hands and prayed together, sharing the pain. 3 months after Grace's passing, Jana agreed to share her story through the family blog. With Stephen's help, she wrote a raw, honest post titled Grace in the Storm. We lost our baby girl, and with her, a piece of our hearts. But we have not lost our hope. We know God holds her now, and while our arms are empty, heaven is fuller. To those of you grieving, you are not alone. The post went viral in the Christian parenting and pro-life communities. Messages of support, shared grief, and prayers flooded in. Some women shared their own stories of miscarriage and infant loss. Jana began corresponding with a few of them, slowly stepping into a role she hadn't expected, a source of comfort for others. A year later, Jana and Stephen stood again at Grace's grave, this time with flowers in hand and a small wooden cross Stephen had carved. I still miss her every day, Jana said. Me too, Stephen replied. But today, I also feel something else. What? Peace? They both smiled, tearfully. Then Stephen reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny pair of baby booties. Jana gasped. Are you? Yes, he said, beaming. You're pregnant. The doctor called. They knelt by Grace's grave and whispered your little brother or sister is on the way. Watch over them for us. Epilogue. The beauty after the rain. The Duggar family had endured loss, but also learned how to hold space for both grief and hope. When Jana gave birth to a healthy baby boy Elijah David Wissmann 2 years later, the joy in the room was tempered with the memory of the child they'd lost. They hung a photo of Grace in the nursery, a reminder that though her time on earth was brief, her impact was eternal. Stephen often sang to Elijah, sometimes mixing in lullabies he'd written during those long nights of mourning. Jana rocked her son while staring out the nursery window, remembering the storm and rejoicing in the sunshine that followed, because even through the deepest pain, love had never let them go. Jinger Duggar opens up about overwhelming visit with large family. Jinger Vulo Ne Duggar admitted that it can be overwhelming to visit her large family in Arkansas after she relocated to California. During the Wednesday, July 2 episode of their Jinger and Jeremy podcast, Jinger, 31, and her husband, Jeremy Vulo, discuss their last-minute trip with their children, Felicity, 6, Evangeline, 4, and Finn, 3 months, to see her family, including parents Jim Bob Duggar and Michelle Duggar, in her home state. It is so exciting. I love going back to visit, Jinger shared. And at the same time, it's overwhelming because we live away. There are a couple siblings who live away now, just a few. And when you live away from family and then you come back, everybody wants to see you. Everybody wants to connect with you, and it can be so tough to juggle all that. Jinger added that trying to coordinate stuff with her family has become even more complicated as her 18 siblings continue to have more kids. Despite feeling stress about seeing everyone, Jinger insisted she had a good time on the trip. A ton of people went to the big house and our kids got to see all the animals that they have there, she said, referring to Jim Bob, 59, and Michelle's home. That was super fun. After Jeremy, 37, pointed out that it had been a long time since they were at the big house, Jinger said it was wild to realize how much her family has changed over the years. When we first walked in, everything's clean, the former TLC star said. It's like perfectly clean. Typically, when you walk into the big house, it's kinda messy. We would clean the house every night and it would be spotless, ready to go. But when you walk in at like 2 p.m. on a weekday and the house is clean, I thought, oh, this is a different season of life. Because you have maybe 5 kids who live there now and they're all grown, so that's strange. Jinger shared that she didn't go into her old bedroom, though Jeremy revealed that he showed their daughters where mommy would sleep. It was fun stepping back into that old property and just seeing the family, Jinger said. I think my younger siblings, that's the part that's really fun. I love seeing how they've grown and matured, what they're into now. Because when I left, that was a long time ago, and those little kids are all grown up. It's hard for me to picture the little kids as teenagers and as adults now. It's kinda wild. Jinger Duggar says it's strange to go home to parents Jim Bob and Michelle's house as an adult. It's always a little weird to go back home after moving out and starting your own life, something even Jinger Duggar is all too familiar with. During this week's episode of the Jinger and Jeremy podcast, she opened up about her recent visit home to Arkansas and how strange she felt being back in Jim Bob and Michelle's house again after so much has changed. Jinger, husband Jeremy Vuolo, and their 3 children visited her family back home in June. And although she said the trip was so exciting, it was also overwhelming at times. Partly because having such a big family means having a lot of people to plan time with. There are a couple siblings who live away now, just a few. And when you live away from family and then you come back, everybody wants to see you, she said. Everybody wants to connect with you, and it can be so tough to juggle all that. They ended up spending a lot of time at her parents' house, which Jinger and her siblings refer to as the big house because it's big enough to accommodate anyone who might have wanted to stop by and see them. The changes that have been made there recently were immediately obvious to Jinger, the first being how clean it is without so many kids running around making messes. It's like perfectly clean. Typically, when you walk into the big house, it's kinda messy, she explained on the podcast. We would clean the house every night, and it would be spotless, ready to go. But when you walk in at like 2 p.m. on a weekday and the house is clean, I thought, this is a different season of life. Because you have maybe 5 kids who live there now, and they all grown, so that's strange. These days, the youngest kid in Jim Bob and Michelle's house is 15-year-old Josie, so the time when toys would be scattered everywhere is long behind them. But despite the strangeness, Jinger said she had fun, and that it was kinda wild to see her youngest siblings turning into adults. I love seeing how my younger siblings have grown and matured, what they're into now, she shared on the podcast. Because when I left, that was a long time ago, and those little kids are all grown up. It's hard for me to picture the little kids as teenagers and as adults now. News: Jill Duggar's new hairdo causes backlash. Jill Duggar Dillard and her husband Derek were overjoyed when they found out they were expecting their fourth Childa baby girl. Her name would be Esla Marie Dillard, and she was already loved by her parents and her 3 older brothers. They eagerly waited for her arrival, dreaming of the day she would fill their home with her cries, her coos. But sometimes, life doesn't follow the plan. At a routine checkup, they heard the words no parent ever wants to hear: there is no heartbeat. Their beautiful baby girl had died in the womb. She was stillborn just months before her expected birth. The couple shared their heartbreak publicly. It is with heavy hearts that we announce the stillbirth of our beautiful baby girl, Esla Marie Dillard. From the moment we found out we were pregnant, we couldn't wait to meet our baby. They held a memorial service for Isla. There was a tiny white coffin, soft toys, handwritten notes, and pale pink flowers. Her name, Isla, meaning devoted to God, and Marie, meaning wished for child, reflected how deeply wanted and cherished she was. Jill and Derek's 3 sons had looked forward to meeting their baby sister. They never got the chance. We will love you forever and hold you in our hearts until we hold you in heaven. Jill Duggar is one of the Duggars who has done the most whistleblowing out of the family. Duggar News followers understand it's not easy going after the people who raised her, but they have been appreciative of her for speaking her truth and calling out the problematic elements. Now, most of Jill's posts surround her home life, her loving husband Derek, and her beautiful kids. One of the major sources of Jill's income is her social media presence. Hence, she is constantly posting things and sharing highlights from her life for everyone's entertainment. However, her new post caused a massive uproar on the internet. So, what exactly did Jill do which was so offensive? Duggar News. Jill Duggar details concerns about high-risk pregnancy, won't have more kids. Jill Duggar had a devastating year. It was during her 2nd trimester of her 4th pregnancy that she ended up having a stillbirth. It was a big deal for her and her husband, Derek Dillard. They had already named their baby girl Esla Marie. They also had a funeral for her in their backyard, and she shared many posts talking about her little one. In an Ask Anything session, a viewer wanted to know if she would have more kids or if she was content with her 3 boys. Well, Jill happily said that they tried to find a girl and talked about Esla Marie. She also said that her pregnancies are high risk, so she and her husband weren't trying at the moment. They were not sure if it would be worth it to try at that point because of Jill's health concerns. She did say that her deliveries and pregnancies from the past have been very difficult. Duggar News. Jill faces criticism for debuting new hairdo. Jill Duggar is always sharing wholesome family updates on her Instagram handle. The Duggar News star has made her husband and kids her sole priority. That's precisely why most of her reels and pictures on the platform contain her husband and kids. But this time around, Jill tried to do something different. She shared a post about how she added a little summer happy to her hair. Well, the video had Jill twirling around with light-colored dreads and braids in her hair. While many people appreciated her in the comments section, others felt differently. On Reddit, someone shared the link to Jill's post and kept saying how offensive it was. Many angry viewers began to call it a classic example of cultural appropriation. The post has since then been deleted from Reddit because of the insensitive comments. Jill Duggar says husband Derek is taking a sabbatical from his career as a lawyer. Jill Duggar and her husband, Derek Dillard, have taken a different route in their lives than many of her married sisters. For much of their early marriage, Derek was still in law school, and now the couple is finally getting to enjoy the fruits of his labor. But is his career path changing after all of that hard work? Jill has finally confirmed that Derek is switching things up, at least for now. Rumors about Derek's career began last month. Just under a month ago, critics on Reddit discovered that Derek's LinkedIn profile indicates that he left his job as an assistant district attorney for the state of Oklahoma, a job he's held since 2022 in January. Now, his employment on his profile indicates that he's an attorney at Dillard Law. Is he starting his own law firm? So far, he hasn't shared any updates on his career himself, so critics have been trying to guess what's going on behind the scenes. Now, Jill is setting the record straight.